Poor guy, trying to explain the inexplicable, to defend the indefensible. Why are you cutting all these millions of people off of Medicaid in the wealthiest, most powerful country on the face of the planet? Well, we don't have unlimited money. We got to be able to cut costs. Why are you cutting children off of food programs so that they have the calories that they need to burn in the classroom over the course of the day to take in whatever that teacher is giving them to unlock that lifelong love of learning? Once we do that, no stopping that kid. But you're stopping that kid. How do you defend that? And this question asked, what is the cost of fascism? I mean, I understand what these programs cost. I understand the return that we get from them. It is absolutely nothing to invest in these kids and our fellow Americans and to make sure that they are okay. But what is the cost of fascism? I'll tell you why that question just knocked me off my feet. Yeah, it's comment here. This is priceless. But I want to just share this one brief piece of history that many of you know or may think you know, but even if you do, it bears repeating. From the day that he was named chancellor in January of 1933, it took Hitler 53 days. 53 days, it was not even 2 months, to destroy German democracy. At every turn over those 53 days, every time he defied the German Constitution, every time he exceeded his constitutional authority, every time he tried to break down the rule of law, the German press, German politicians, and most importantly, the German people did far too little, far too late. In 53 days, this guy went from a buffoonish thug who could barely hold power to the undisputed master and dictator of the German people. Now watch me. In the last 6 months, since Donald Trump was sworn into office, he has defied the co-equal constitutional branch of government, the federal courts, not once, but repeatedly. He has dismantled congressionally chartered and mandated agencies and departments like the Department of Education, another co-equal branch. He has colluded with corrupt public officials. He has shielded the wealthy and the elite and the privileged for the most debased crimes that we can imagine, including raping young girls in this country. And he has dispensed with the constitutional protections and safeguards that, to this point, over the last 249 years, have kept us a country of laws and not of kings. And now, he seeks to grab even more power. He understands that without these 5 congressional seats in Texas, his policies, these cuts to Medicaid, these Gestapo tactics that are terrorizing hardworking Americans all over this country, the massive transfer of wealth in that big, beautiful bill, in addition to everything else, nearly $1 trillion is being moved from you, working Americans, to the wealthiest 1% in this country. No one is down with that program. He's not going to win unless he cheats ahead of time, trying to steal the 2026 election in the summer of 2025. And thick as thieves, those Texas Republicans are working with him in lockstep because they understand if they fail, there will be a check on his lawlessness. There will be accountability for his corruption and his crimes, and there will be free and fair elections in this country going forward. But if we fail to stop him, to stop them, and to stand up for this great country, 249 years into this most noble experiment, then the consolidation of authoritarian power in America, I believe, will be nearly unstoppable. What does that mean? More masked, plainclothes federal agents without badges or warrants sweeping our fellow Americans up off the streets, illegally detaining them, imprisoning them, deporting them to countries they have never been to, whose languages they do not speak, too many, and we don't know the number, into a gulag in El Salvador, out from which they will never come, a life sentence For we don't know, because there has been no due process, no defense, and no facts. We don't even know their names. What does this mean? It means that more of Trump's political enemies will be targeted for retribution, for persecution, and yes, even for violence. In that big, beautiful bill, they added $45 billion to ICE, to DHS, to build new detention capacity. You ask yourself the following question. Immigration is at an all-time low in this country, including undocumented or illegal immigration over the southern border. The lowest numbers we've ever seen in this country's history. The sweeps being conducted under Donald Trump are the biggest that we've ever seen. It's the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the Family Dollars and the grocery stores and the roofers and the construction sites, and everywhere they can find somebody, churches, schools, they're picking them up. So, if we have record low immigration, record high sweeps, fewer and fewer people for them to pick up, why would you spend $45 billion to build new detention capacity in a country that has already hit the zenith in detention capacity so far? I'll tell you why. Because first they come for the so-called terrorists and gangbangers and illegals and violent criminals. Then they come for the U.S.-born children of immigrants, which he's promised to do on his first day in office. He wants to overturn the 14th Amendment, ratified, folks, in 1868, guaranteeing birthright citizenship. He says you're illegal because your parents were born somewhere else. Those cells are for you. And then what about his political opponents who have the audacity to stand up for these immigrants and their fellow Americans who are being targeted right now? Maybe they're enemies of the state, and we need to put them up there. You know the poem. First they came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the trade unions, but I wasn't a member of a trade union, so I did not speak a word. Then they came for the Jews. Because I was not a Jew, I didn't say a thing. And then when they came for me, there was no one left to speak up at all. This is what is happening in our America today. This will be unstoppable unless we stop it now. And I guarantee you, a complicit, cowardly, quisling Republican majority in Congress, if we fail right now to win 2026, will roll out that royal red carpet for a Trump third term. This is our future unless we fight for a different one right now at this moment of truth. But here's what I ask of all of us. For far too long, and we all saw this and we participated in it in the first Trump term, we were all about fighting back, about resisting, about reacting, about responding, and that's natural, okay? That's just human nature. But we can no longer await the punch thrown by these would-be fascists. I'm asking you to throw our punch first and to throw it harder, to get off of defense and onto offense, to go everywhere. Fight in every district, in every state, in every county within every state, to do everything we have to do right now before it's too late. Because as you know from your history, there was a resistance in Germany. There was a resistance in France. There was a resistance in Poland. There was a resistance in the ghettos. That resistance came too late for too many millions of people over the course of the 1940s in Europe. We cannot wait. We must learn lest we repeat what happened to them. So this is our chance right now. And fighting through this instead of fighting back, fighting forward instead of fighting back, this means we support those Texas Democrats right now. This means that if you have not yet already volunteered with the folks with Blue Dot here to reach and register the voters we need, not only to win the 2nd Congressional District, which we will in 2026, but with Mike Flood's own dumbass words on the record, we need to beat that guy in the 1st District in 2026 as well. And no longer, I know our chairwoman agrees, but no longer will we concede authority within the Democratic Party to the geniuses who say we're going to blow the entire wad on 7 states It's got to be all 50 states. It's got to be Nebraska. It's got to be Texas. It's got to be Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, all of us together fighting everywhere. That's how we're going to beat them. But I hope you agree. It is not enough to fight them alone. It's not enough to sound the alarm about what our fate will be unless we fight today. I mean, that's important, and that's a step. But we also have to give our fellow Americans something that they can fight for. I think there was some confusion in 2024, present company excluded, but too many Democrats were talking about saving and restoring things like a democracy. And our fellow Americans were understandably confused. When you say democracy, they asked, do you mean the process by which members of Congress choose their own voters? Do you mean that one man can spend $300 million supporting the presidential candidate of his choice? Do you mean members of Congress and state legislators and others can stay in office for the rest of their natural lives? Do you mean a system, thanks to the Citizens United decision, that equates corporations with people and money with speech? That's not a democracy. What are you trying to say? What if, instead of saving that, we build a democracy in this country that is worth saving in the first place? So we overturn Citizens United. We pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Adjustment Act. We get big money out of politics, politicians, out of redistricting, and we return the power, all of the power, back to the people. That's a start. But we have no hope of this political democracy if we don't also create an economic one as well. Because if our fellow Americans cannot get what they need, and they're not asking for much, from a government of the many, soon enough, they're pretty open to getting what they need from a government of the few, and ultimately to getting what they want from a government of only one. So as we listen to our fellow Americans, let's remember, as the wealthiest, most powerful country on the face of the planet in the whole of human history, we do not lack for the resources to get this done, but for the political will to accomplish it. So imagine this, an America where you're guaranteed if you work one job, that one job is sufficient to pay your costs, the note on your mortgage, to take care of your kids, to be safe and happy in your home. An America where you can afford to buy a home in the first place because too many cannot afford to do that today. An America where you're guaranteed the ability to see a doctor when you're sick, before you're sick, and so that you don't get sick, you have access to healthy and fresh food, clean drinking water, no matter where you live, the space and time to exercise and move your body and spend those hours with your kids, with your folks, with your friends, with your family, the stuff that makes life worth living in the first place. Remember, though we have the luxury of this time together here in this room tonight in Omaha, millions, tens of millions of our fellow Americans are working not one, but 2 or 3 jobs in states like mine where the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. They don't have time for this, nor can they spend that time reading to their child before the first day of kindergarten, which is going to start soon in my hometown of El Paso, or just getting to take care of a loved one who might be sick or need a helping hand at that moment. We can do better than that. I ask you also to think about how we treat each other beyond the money, the economics, and the dollars. The dignity and basic respect that each of us should be afforded, not as Democrats or Republicans, not even as Americans, but as human beings. Whoever you are, however you are born, whoever you love, you are in the right place. And when those in power attack you, you've got to know that we have your back. We will not accept, going forward in our vision, a Democratic Party for the sake of expediency or political convenience that abandons transgender Americans to the attacks that are being waged by this administration. We will not abandon the very ideas of diversity and equity and inclusion. Those are good things, and we want them everywhere in this country. And we will not abandon those that they are trying to divide us from, to distract us by. We will come together, and we'll do that here, and we'll do that and abroad. Imagine an America that is no longer complicit in the bombing and the starving and the slaughtering of innocent children in Gaza, and instead uses that power this awesome power of our country to work with the nations of the region, the nations of the world, if that's what it takes, to establish a sovereign, independent state for the Palestinian people and to work for their safety and security and that of the Israelis and everyone else in the region. That is called sowing peace to reap prosperity, not just for them, but for us back here at home. That's what we can look forward to. And we bring those same ideas back to America. No more of these warrantless arrests. I mean, I've got a 17-year-old daughter. I saw the video taken out of a second-story apartment window of the young Tufts graduate student. These plainclothes federal agents jumping out of an unmarked van, abducting her and pulling it into. If that happened to my daughter, what would be going through my mind at that time? Is she being kidnapped? Will she be raped? Will she be killed? What will happen to her? We are doing that to our fellow Americans in what we tell the rest of the world is the land of the free. This doesn't sound like that to me. To meet that challenge, I imagine an America where we recommit ourselves to this Constitution, to the rights and protections that are contained therein, including this idea of due process, of being able to have the facts laid out before you, your defense attorney, the judge, and the public so that we know what is being done in our name right now. And on this issue of immigration, which the president seeks to further divide all of us on, I've got to say for myself and my own party, we have talked a really good game about fixing this broken immigration system for as long as I have been paying attention. But there's been a problem and a disconnect for too many in this country. When we win power, as we did in 2008, the White House, the House, and the Senate. When we win power, as we did in 2020, the White House, the House, and the Senate, Americans can be forgiven for asking, what progress did you make on this promise that you gave to us? So no more promising comprehensive immigration reform. When we win power again going forward, we drive the car like we stole it. We rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, based on our values, reflecting our reality. Every dreamer legalized in this country, every dreamer's parents legalized in this country, every hardworking American doing the back-breaking work that builds this country in the first place, legal in America, able to do even more as full U.S. citizens. That is what we can accomplish if we follow through on a vision to build a country worth saving in the first place. And look, for those who are asking and wondering, what do you think about security? Well, we can all agree that we want our borders controlled, that we want to know who is coming in to America, that we want to protect our families and loved ones from any violent criminal, whether they were born in Omaha or El Paso or Ciudad Juarez or anywhere else in the world. I'm on the same page. But let us not labor under the illusion that immigrants are taking anything from any of us. They are contributing far more to the success of America than they could ever draw down, ever. And lastly, I want you to imagine a Democratic Party reflecting the leadership that we see here in the room tonight that fights for all of these things. It doesn't apologize, that doesn't calculate, that doesn't triangulate, that doesn't go to consultants or focus groups or message testing factories in Washington, D.C. or New York or wherever they have those places, but just listens to the people that we want to work with and fight right alongside with. That makes sure that when we have the courage of our convictions, our fellow Americans not just hear it, but they see it in the actions and the steps that we take, that we fight everywhere, on every single front. Now, I know that the Democratic Party will pour a lot of resources in here every 4 years in a presidential contest because you award your electoral college votes by congressional district. And in case it's close, we want to make sure that we do okay here. But what if we had a Democratic Party that poured those resources here every single year in every single congressional district, that wrote nobody off and took nobody for granted? I'll close with this, and then we've got another microphone to bring more people into the conversation. There is part of you, if you're anything like me, that is tempted to despair or even to doubt whether this is possible. I mean, we are up against literally the most powerful man on the planet, whose power, thanks to a complicit Supreme Court and a supine Congress, grows by the hour. He is backed by the wealthiest people, literally, in world history, whose riches are measured in the tens of billions of dollars, soon to be close to $1 trillion to a single human being, able under our current laws to spend unlimited amounts of money to purchase the outcomes of elections. I mean, you wouldn't be human if you didn't doubt whether it was possible that we could overcome this. But I want to remind you who we are, what we're made of, and where we come from. These 249 years and counting, every single major challenge that has come our way, no matter the odds, no matter the chances, we have stood together ultimately, stood against it, and we've overcome it. The might of the British Empire, the most powerful force on the planet at the time, we defeated them to secure our independence and our freedom from being ruled by kings. The armies of the Confederacy, we sacrificed 300,000 Union men to that cause to defeat them and end the institution of slavery and the very idea that one human being could own another. June 6, 1944, brave young men from this very community landed on those beaches in Normandy to defeat fascism half a world away, to protect democracy here at home and for our allies. And it wasn't even a generation later that brave souls all across this country rose up against the elected and armed thugs of Jim Crow South and prevailed for the full civil, political, and voting rights of every American, regardless of your race, your gender, your country of national origin. At every turn, everyone who has preceded us stepped up to be counted and came through at that defining moment of truth. You and I, alive today in 2025, we are the heirs to all of that service, all of that struggle, and all of that sacrifice. And what we do with this grand inheritance is going to define us in the eyes of history, and it will determine what is possible for this country. We cannot be found wanting at this moment of truth, and we must not wait until the moment has passed to fight. So I ask you tonight to do all you can with what you have right where you are here in Omaha and every single day going forward. It is the only way that we have any chance of coming through and saving what Lincoln called the last best hope of earth. I truly believe that's who we are at the end of the day. But in order to get there, we must fight. Are you with me in this? We are together. Thank you for having us out tonight, Omaha. Thank you, Chairwoman, Executive Director Precious. Cynthia, if you'll come up so folks can see you. This is my fellow El Pasoan, Cynthia Cano, who helped along with the party to organize tonight's meeting. She's got the second microphone. If you will catch her attention, she'll bring the mic over to you, and we're going to try to get as many voices into this conversation. Quick ground rules. No one has to agree with anyone. You don't have to agree or support me. You don't have to be a Democrat. What the chairwoman said at the outset was so damn important. If you voted for Donald Trump in the last election, we are glad that you're here. If you voted for Kamala Harris, you are welcomed at this meeting as well. If you didn't vote at all, even better. We're here to listen and learn from you, so we give you a reason to vote in 2026. So we want to hear from everyone tonight. Ms. Cano, we're going to turn it over to you.
So if you raise your hand, I will make my way to you if you have a question. We have our first question over here. And Beto, just really quick, an update on the fundraising so far. Since we've started this event, the donations are equal to $3,597.
Wow. All right, thanks, everybody. $3,000 raised for the Texas Democrats. If you haven't given and you want to, you text FIGHT to 20377. Okay, Ms. Cano, our first question or comment.
Comment, not a question. Two of them, actually. One, I'm a Jew, and I know of no other Jew that supports Netanyahu and what is happening in Gaza. And two, credit where it's due. All those Democrats in Illinois, their lodging is being provided out of pocket by J.B. Pritzker. And we owe it a thank you to him, too.
I love that. For those who didn't hear, the gentleman said, let's give credit where credit is due. J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, is helping to host these out-of-state Democrats right now, all 56 of them. And he's doing so at some political cost. And as my friend Joaquin Castro from Texas has said, this is a season for fighters only. I mean, I think there's a time for compromise and consensus and getting along and not rocking the boat. This is not that time right now. We need fighters, and J.B. Pritzker is a fighter. Thank you for bringing him up. Appreciate that.
Hey, good evening. Pleasure that you're here. I guess one of the questions I have is what is the Democratic Party, not just necessarily in Omaha, Nebraska, but nationwide, doing to engage younger people to come out to vote? I know in Nebraska, it's really challenging to convince my friends, my neighbors to go out to vote because they say, why does it matter? The Republicans are going to win. It doesn't matter. It's just a throwaway, so why show up? So I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Absolutely. Great question. Could you tell us your age, if you don't mind? I know this is a personal question.
Oh, yeah, I'm 29.
Okay, 29 years old. All right. The people who are applauding remember how fun it was to be 29 years old. And I wish I was there. So, great question, right? And let me give you a few thoughts on some things that have worked for us in Texas that may be applicable in Nebraska or other places nationally. When I was running against Ted Cruz, you all know that we came up a little bit short, right? 2.5 points. But some major transformations took place in Texas. There were 12 insurgent Democrats who won election to the state house, defeating 12 incumbent Republicans. We had 2 Democrats running for Congress against entrenched, well-funded incumbents on the other side who had no business winning, including Colin Allred against Pete Sessions. And they won in Harris County, home to Houston, Texas. It's a county of 5 million people. It's the most diverse city in the United States of America. 17 black women won election to judicial positions. It was transformative in Texas. And I'll tell you how we did that. At the outset of the campaign, we made a virtue of a necessity. We couldn't hire a campaign manager at first because no one would take my phone call. They're like, you're just fucking crazy. You want to run against Ted Cruz in Texas, where a Democrat last won a Senate race in 1988, right? And no Democrat has won statewide since 1994. And your name ID, Beto, as a congressman in West Texas is at 1%. Ted Cruz is at 100. He has a war chest that is overflowing from his nearly successful bid for the Republican primary presidential nomination. You want to go up against this guy, and you're not going to take a single dime of PAC money, whether it's liberal PAC money, union PAC money, or corporate PAC money. You're crazy. We made a virtue of a necessity. We didn't know what we were doing. We couldn't have hired a consultant even if we wanted to. We couldn't have polled the race. So we just went everywhere. And I found myself going where young people were, right? Because at the time, it was 8 years ago, I was a lot younger, than I am today. And so college campuses, technical college campuses, union halls, bars, nightclubs, diners, wherever I could find young people. And as we started to gain traction, somebody who had campaign experience in Texas pulled me aside. He said, look, I love your spirit, Beto. I know what you're trying to do. Those young people are exciting. They talk a big game, but they don't vote. And the proof of that was in the turnout rates for 18 to 29-year-olds. They're just absolutely in the toilet. You have limited time and limited resources. Please do not waste them on these young people. Instead, go to the folks who reliably vote election in and election out. And I got that logic, but I said, here's my logic. I might not vote either if no politician ever bothered to show up and listen to me and have a conversation and fight alongside me and take my issues and make them theirs. So we went, and we continued this effort. The people who powered that transformation that I just described were young people. Young voter turnout in Texas in 2018 was up 518% from the previous midterm election. So, it's not sophisticated. It's not rocket science. There's no real strategy to it. It's you literally go and you're with the people that you want to serve. And to your great question, the people who in many cases are missing from this room right now, right? Earlier today in Kansas City, we went to a meeting that was only open to people who were 18 to 30 years old, to listen to them, to follow their lead, to hear what was on their minds, the solutions to the problems that they posed. And I learned a lot. And I left inspired and fired up, wanting to do more. I think as a party, just as a people, we got to be with these young folks. You know, at every one of those turns of history that I described, Lexington and Concord, the courthouse at Appomattox, those beaches in Normandy, John Lewis marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge from Selma to Montgomery. John Lewis was 24 years old. Those people landing on those beaches in Omaha and Juneau and Normandy, they were 17, 18, 19 years old. Those 300,000 Union dead, 18, 19, 20 years. It's not as though young people are lazy. And it's not as though they have not led this country at every single major turn. They have. But this system that I was describing earlier that is so rigged, they see it. They have the most acute bullshit detector of any human on this planet. And if their vote's not going to count, if Elon Musk can spend $300 million and get all the attention in the world and affect the outcome, and their one measly vote isn't going to make much of a difference, well, maybe I just don't participate in this thing at all. And that's why I think we have to call out the corruption in our system, the failure of this democracy. Stop saying that we're going to restore or save something that really hasn't been working for a very long time, and instead include them in the process of building something that does work and is worth saving. Thank you for the question.
To your left, in the back of the room. Keep going right. Sorry, we're in the back of the room.
Okay.
Hey, this is actually kind of ironic because if you know me, this is not my real voice, but I'm not sick. I have asthma, fun fact, which is going to lead me into my next point, which is unregulated AI. I don't know if my question is for you or if I came here to use this platform to talk about unregulated AI. Your state, did it not just eat up 483 million gallons of water in Texas? People in Memphis, Tennessee cannot breathe because Elon Musk is running 35 fuel turbines in a very concentrated area, and their respiratory illnesses are exacerbating. We are drinking nitrate because of data centers. The entire workforce, there is a plan. I just want to make sure everybody has an understanding that, and I'm sorry, I'm taking your stage for a second.
No, not at all.
But the workforce will be humanoid robots. That is the plan. By 2030 to 2035, they want to decimate the workforce and replace it with AI. That is where these data centers are coming from. And they are eating up our electricity grids. And they are eating up our water. And they are poisoning our air. And Deb Fisher and Pete Ricketts right now will not stop writing bills deregulating EPA. To the citizens of Nebraska, Erin Brockovich was based on a real story. They poisoned her water. That was a real story. Chernobyl was due to a lack of dedicated care. If somebody doesn't step in and regulate this, it could go very badly. And I just want everybody in Nebraska to know that as we move forward. And I also want you to know this. Elon Musk laid off 80% of his staff, replaced them with AI, and now there is unregulated, unmoderated child porn all over that internet. It is AI too. It is AI generated. Everybody needs to think about what happens next. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for saying this. You know, to build on the excellent point that you made, you all may have followed this in 2021. It got really cold in Texas, kind of a real bad cold snap. You all also probably know we are literally, this isn't hyperbole, we are the energy capital of the world. Our petroleum resources, our wind resources, our solar capacity, we lead the nation in all three of those, is absolutely unrivaled. In that cold snap, the geniuses who run the state of Texas could not keep the energy flowing, the power on, the grid operating, the gas and the heat flowing into people's homes. 700 people died in the state of Texas. There was a veteran who froze to death in his truck. He could no longer charge his oxygen tank in his home, went out to his truck to try to do the same, where they found him dead. There was an 11-year-old boy, Conroe, Texas. His mom piled one blanket after another on top of him. When she woke up in the morning, he was dead, froze to death in this country in the year of our Lord, 2021. That was before Trump was elected, and his EPA just declared that greenhouse gas emissions are in fact not a bad thing that is harming human life and contributing to climate change, but a good thing. And it is the regulations that this young woman is talking about that are the things that are hurting us right now. George Orwell could not come up with this shit. It is the craziest absolute upending of truth, where black is white and good is bad and death is life, literally happening in this country right now. And to her other excellent point, they always say, watch the money or follow the money. Yep. Look who is getting wealthy and look who is connected to the president right now. It is absolutely incontrovertible that all of this is corruption. And none of this is about saving or protecting or helping anyone's life. And so the question asked is, well, how do we stop this? How do we control it? How do we regulate it? Whether it's AI, energy consumption, poisoning our water, or poisoning our air. There is no way out but through. There is no way through but winning power. And in my party, present company excluded, we have cared for far too long more about being right than we have about being in power. The other side has cared more about being in power than anything else. We have to be ruthlessly focused about winning power, first stopping this power grab in Texas, then winning the additional seats necessary to flip control of the House. That begins right here in this district in Nebraska, and then using that power ultimately to gain the control necessary to impose these regulations, to protect human life, and to regulate new technologies that we are just beginning to understand and appreciate, that have the ability to cause not just human harm, not to be too dark today, but really to extinguish all human life if left uncontrolled. This is our challenge. This is our chance. You may feel like it really sucks to be alive at this moment, or you may say, how lucky am I to be one of the very few generations that gets to fight for this country at its moment of truth. Odds are against us, but I always put my money on the underdog. I think we're going to win. All right, here we go. Ms. Connor.
Hi, I'm excited to be here today. My name's Kayla. I'm actually originally from the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, but call Nebraska my home since age 11. So I'm glad that in a recent town hall and even in this one, you've talked about Palestine and have correctly labeled it a genocide. However, much of the Democratic Party leadership continues to dance around this subject, defend Israel, and continues to take money from AIPAC despite the ongoing genocide. How do you envision the future of the Democratic Party as it relates to Israel? And how can we as voters trust Democrat sincerity in wanting to prevent fascism while it defends the fascist government of Israel, which has a history of training U.S. ICE agents, Border Patrol, and police?
Yeah. Thank you, Kayla, for the question. Yeah, I mean, if we were reading about us from 100 years in the future, so much of this would be inexplicable without following the money, right? Like, you all know my home state and maybe even my hometown. 6 years ago, almost to the day, 23 people were killed by a guy who could legally purchase an AK-47 online. His mom called the police in Allen, Texas and said, hey, something's wrong with my son. He just bought a high-powered assault weapon that was designed for use on a battlefield because its sole purpose is blowing people away. I need some help. And the cops said, you know what? What he's doing is perfectly legal. Nothing we can do for you. Good luck. Goodbye. He drove 600 miles, walked into a Walmart in El Paso on the Saturday before the school year started, and just blew away 23 people in under 3 minutes. In a city that doesn't lose 20 people a year to murder, we are so peaceful, not in spite of the fact that we're a city of immigrants, but because we're a city of immigrants. And that is who he came to kill. Now, how does that happen? And in the same state, not even 3 years later, an 18-year-old buys not one but two AR-15s, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, walks into Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, blows away 19 kids whose bodies can only be identified by the shoes that they are wearing because their bodies and faces are so badly disfigured, along with two of their teachers. And nothing, not a single law has changed to make either of those events any less likely in my home state or in yours. How would we explain that? We look at the power of the NRA and the gun lobby and these political action committees and the members of Congress whose complicity and silence they purchase. We look at AIPAC on this issue of Israel and the untold sway that they hold over Democrats and Republicans alike. And listen, I understand the Citizens United decision, and I understand our operations of campaign financing in this country, and what they are doing is perfectly legal. It doesn't make it any less corrupt, in my opinion, in terms of the outcomes that we see. And so you ask what we can do. I mean, I think we need to ask our candidates, and actually don't ask them, but look at the campaign finance reports and see who it is that they are taking these dollars from, because there's a good chance that that will sway or at least influence the choices and the decisions they make. And this great question I got asked by our 29-year-old friend over here about how do we reach and connect with and turn out young voters. If they see us turning a blind eye to the greatest atrocities that are being committed on this planet with the full complicity of the United States, who's literally providing the bombs and the money and the ammunition and the shells to this country that is slaughtering more than 50,000 people, most of them innocent, tens of thousands of them children, how are they going to support us in future elections? We have to be clear on the issues that are morally defined right before us. That is one of them. And you're right, money has a lot to do to explain why we're seeing something that would otherwise be inexplicable. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
You went into one of the questions I was going to ask in reference. My brother was killed by an illegal handgun. So are we actually going to do something as a Democratic Party about the insane amount of guns in this country and the insane amount of people that are dying because of the gun industry?
Thank you for this question. And I'll tell you, on the question asked a moment ago, on this issue of immigration that I brought up, on this issue of guns and gun violence and gun death, I think this is another explanation for why so many young people have fallen out of the political process. I mean, they saw Sandy Hook, they saw Uvalde, they saw El Paso, they saw one shooting after another. And in many cases, they had friends or family members who died from gun violence, sometimes self-inflicted in this country, right? Because of the easy access, lack of background checks, no red flag laws, no protection. We have to remind one another that this doesn't happen anywhere else on the planet except in this country right now. And either we are uniquely violent and evil and mad, or else this is a human-caused problem with a human solution to it. Now, the frustration from young people especially, I understand. And I get the temptation to just disconnect from the political process. This clearly isn't working. But that history lesson I gave earlier about the civil rights and the voting rights movement, for example. There was a voting rights bill before Congress in 1890, at the end of the 19th century, because you had all manners of voting violations, especially in states like mine, where they would literally rob the ballot box at gunpoint. They would lynch poll workers. They would, by force of violence, remove black office holders from office. It ended Reconstruction. In 1890, the United States Congress had an opportunity to implement federal voting rights that would have prevented this, saved lives, and kept us a democracy. But we failed in doing that. And so for the next 75 years until 1965, how many people labored in absolute anonymity? How many names will we never know? How many songs will never be sung about these people whose work ultimately culminated in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965? 75 years. Now, I sure as hell hope it doesn't take us 75 years to address the problem of gun violence in this country. But the lesson that I've learned is you've got to try and you've got to keep trying, because the only way you are certain to lose is if you give up. And my other lesson from history is the more that we persist, the more that we have the courage of our convictions, the more likely we are ultimately to come through. Whether it is on gun violence, whether it is this atrocity that we are seeing in Gaza right now, whether it is the fact that in my state and in your state, if you're a woman making your own decisions about your own body, your own future, and your own health care is almost impossible right now. And it got bad in 2022. But one more quick Texas story. In 1973, abortion was just as illegal in my home state. But 3 courageous Texas women, Jane Roe, whom you've heard of, Linda Coffey, and Sarah Weddington. She was a 26-year-old lawyer from Abilene, Texas. The most complicated case she'd ever handled as a lawyer was a no-contest divorce. She and her law partner in 1973 prevail upon an all-male United States Supreme Court to render the Roe versus Wade decision, forever changing, at least for 49 years, the possibility for women to have control over their bodies and their lives. No one rode to their rescue. That work had been in the process for decades before they finally won in 1973. So on any and all of these issues, we cannot afford to give up. We have to remember where we come from, who we're made of, and what we can do at the end of the day. To answer your question, no, I will not give up, and we'll keep fighting until we change this. Thank you.
I'd like to, because I am 13, about 14, and it is my responsibility at school, it seems, to tell these kids about why it is important to be political, as most of my friends, they think I am being idiotic for being political, and just influencing young people, it seems extremely hard. How could, in my opinion, how could you think it'll be influence people under the age of 18 to go out and register to vote the second they turn 18, to get involved as young people, to do this stuff that we should be doing? Like, democracy is under attack, and there's nothing, most people aren't doing anything. These Republicans are going out and gerrymandering the Texas districts and just looking at everything. America is under attack and influencing young people. How do you think we should be influencing under 18 children to actually do stuff instead of just standing by and watching things happen?
Got it. Tell me your name.
My name is Alexander Beavers.
Alex?
Alexander Beavers.
Okay. Hey, let's hear it for a 13, 14-year-old willing to stand up. It's awesome. This is the future. This is great. So something that strikes me in the question that you asked, and I think the answer is contained within your question about what we need to do. I think when someone gets a chance to listen to you, you're not old enough to vote, you're not old enough to run for or hold office, and yet you will bear the brunt of the consequences of every decision that everyone who is old enough to vote, who does currently hold office, makes going forward. Your voice, I think, carries some additional weight. At least it does with me. In some ways, you, like my own kids, I have an 18, a 17, and a 14-year-old of my own. They're my conscience. And I fear your judgment for what I do or fail to do right now while I have the power to do it. So you keep speaking up. You keep coming to meetings like these. Maybe we take you on the road with us and you speak at town halls like this everywhere. We need you right now. Thank you. Keep doing it. Yes. Good job. Yes. Let's go, Alex. I like that. Thank you. What's that? I will. Right after this is over. I'll sign it. Yeah.
Here we go.
Hi, Beto. Thank you for being here. I want to hook on to the lady that was so smart about the comments earlier about the AI being unfettered and unchecked. And I think we maybe all need to come to the realization and the understanding that's why they're cutting our education, our health care, everything else, because they don't need us. Yeah. And they don't care if we die. Yeah. And so people have to get active and get doing something now because they'll get rid of us.
Yeah. You almost, I wasn't a conspiracy theorist until very recently. Cutting early childhood education, cutting the Head Start program, cutting Title I funding to public schools, which helps ensure that children who come from lower income households have every chance that every other kid, including the rich ones, do to learn and get ahead of life. Cutting research funding to universities across the country, not just the Harvards and the Columbias and the Browns, but state universities across this country. Research dollars that are investing in the cures to cancer, to Alzheimer's, to Parkinson's, to the diseases that we are suffering from and our loved ones are dying from right now. It almost makes you think that all of this stuff is coordinated and is on purpose and is intentional. When you look at education, you remember the old great Thomas Jefferson quote, the best defense against tyranny is an educated citizenry. What happens when you purposefully dumb down that citizenry by slashing, disposing of the Department of Education literally entirely, and all the funding going to all these schools, wrapping up our tax dollars and sending them to private schools in the form of vouchers? At least that's what it looks like in Texas, maybe something similar here in Nebraska. This post-truth world that we're in, where the president can defy the facts at every turn. Hey, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that maybe we didn't create as many jobs as you wanted to. Just fire that person, replace them with your own, and make up any numbers that you want to. When his first-term spokesperson talked about Trump using alternative facts, or maybe that was Kellyanne Conway, I thought it was funny at the time too. But these are the alternative universes that our fellow Americans are living in, and we cannot afford to condemn them, or to judge them, or to write them off, or to cancel them. I think we have to empathize right now that they are watching television programs. They're receiving algorithmic feeds that show them that what is black is white, what is truth is a lie, and vice versa. And we must have the patience. This will not be easy. Won't be solving it with money. We will not be solving it with AI or technology. You can only solve it like we're solving it tonight, person to person, human to human, eyeball to eyeball, connecting with one another. That stuff is so profoundly powerful. I think it's the only thing that can override exactly what you just described that is happening in this country today. So, more of this, right? More of us coming together. It doesn't matter if the group is 5 or 6 or 500 people. As long as we're coming together, I think, remember this other great quote from one of our founding fathers, Ben Franklin says, "We either hang together or we will swing alone." They're going to try to divide us and go after us one after another. We've got to come together right now. So thank you for pointing this out. Again, we've got to win political power to turn this around. Miss Kama.
All right, we have a lot of hands up. I'm going to go a little bit quicker so we can get to more questions.
She wants me to be briefer in my responses. I hear you. I hear you.
Hey, Beto. Welcome. Thank you for coming today. Hey, my name is Keith Lawrence. This is my wife, Angela. I always say hi to her. Hey, at any rate, what I wanted to say is that you mentioned a couple of things. One was about power and the use of power. And can anybody hear me okay?
Yes.
You always say I got
to... When you hold it close, it's... Yeah.
Okay. I'm kissing this thing pretty soon. You talked about power and the use of power. And one thing I say about the Democrats, we don't use power at all. And every time we've had opportunity to use power for the good of the constituents, we've missed it. And when the other party's in power, they use it to the end. So I guess my question is, how do we go about not only getting the power, but maintaining the power? And also, too, I wanted to kind of hit you on the head with the Supreme Court. Everything that you're seeing happening right now is due to the Supreme Court and the decisions they've made, okay? And when we had a chance to use the power to get an extra person in the Supreme Court, we didn't use it. So I want to know what we're going to do now to change the Supreme Court. We need something more complex than just kind of letting things ride. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Excellent comments. I think, from your comments, and I think about the use of power, perhaps my favorite Democratic president for sure was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The country was at a similar turning point in 1932 as it is today in 2025. The rise of populism was prevalent all across the globe. And it basically came in two forms. You had authoritarian populism, think Mussolini and Hitler and these other dictators and fascists and tyrants who were coming to power, and not just in Europe, but in Japan and elsewhere around the world. And you had kind of a democratic populism, and FDR was an adherent and a proponent and a leader of that. And America could have gone in either direction. You all have seen the photos, right? Or maybe even some of the video from Madison Square Garden, absolutely sold out with members of the American Nazi Party. Charles Lindbergh, one of, if not the most famous people in America, was himself an America firster, a Nazi in other terms. We could have very easily gone down that path. So when FDR won power, he knew that he had to use it because he understood what the alternative meant for America. And if he had failed in that first term to wield that power to make everyday Americans' lives better, that power would have been ceded to the fascists, the tyrants, the Nazis. That could have very well been our future. And so what did he do? I mean, the Social Security Administration, the Works Progress Administration, he tried to pack the Supreme Court, and he got caught trying. He was unsuccessful in doing that. It was a step too far, but God bless the man for trying to go past the bounds of the power that had been prescribed to him. He was going to do everything that he possibly could with the most powerful office in the land to change this country for the better. And he did. For the next 80 years, we were living in Roosevelt's America, probably until the Ronald Reagan revolution and the trickle-down voodoo economics and this wealth disparity. I mean, check this out. This is what happens post-FDR, and this is what happens when Democrats do not wield the power as the gentleman is asking us to do. In the last 5 decades, I'm 53, so for most of my life, $50 trillion has moved from lower and middle-income Americans to the wealthiest people in the country. 50 trillion. So the 1 trillion that just got moved in the big, beautiful bill, that's the most in any one piece of legislation, but it's really not, cumulatively speaking, the outlier. That is the consequence. And you know what happens? It builds frustration and alienation and estrangement from your government, and this thing's not working for me, and democracy's not worth it, and yes, go drain the swamp, blow it up, defy the Constitution, do whatever you have to do, Donald Trump, just make my life better. And if Democrats are offering compromise and consensus, and we'll meet you in the middle, and we don't want to offend anybody, and we want to see if this poll's right, and we need to be in the middle of the road so we don't offend either side, I mean, you know what? We really got what we deserved in that, but the American people didn't deserve that at all. And so I'm saying, we have to care more about power than we care about anything else. Winning that power in the first place and then using that power to its maximum extent to change this country for the better. Thank you for your comment.
All right, we have time for 4 more questions.
Got it.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold it as close as you can.
Okay, great. I just have, maybe this is a question for the Democratic Party, maybe this is for like everybody present, but how are we going to combat the fact that young men, especially young white men, feel impassioned and empowered by this like white nationalism that we continue to see spreading throughout the country? Like what's our plan? What are we going to do? Because it's really, really dangerous for anybody who falls outside of that demographic, and it scares me, so.
Yeah. Man, what a great question. Thank you for asking it. Just so happened, you guys can tell I'm a history buff, and I keep recounting all this stuff that happened 300 years ago, and you're like, what does this mean for my life today? But one of the most profound pieces of American literature, poetry really, in my opinion, is Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural. I think it's under 700 words. I mean, imagine a politician only using 700 words during their inaugural address. And this is in 1865, right? And he'd just committed, more than 300,000 of his fellow Americans to their deaths in this civil war that was not yet won. It wasn't completely finished. I mean, we were on the way out. And in that address, he talks about, we both read the same Bible, we both pray to the same God, and then as an aside, he says, though we may find it strange that some may pray to our gods for our God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of another man's face. But let us not judge, he says, lest we be judged. If anyone had the right, the moral authority to judge his fellow American at that time, it was Abraham Lincoln and those on the side of the Union. I have to tell you, I have a question. Whether that was the right tack to take at the time, whether the defeat of the Confederacy was ever total or sufficient. Because as I mentioned earlier, by 1890, it has reemerged in the guise of the KKK, in Jim Crow, and something far less than a democracy in my home state of Texas, where if you were black and if you were brown, if your parents or great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents were born in Mexico, or if you were born in what is now the United States and the border crossed you, you could not cast a ballot. And so, there's an instinct that we have, many of us as Democrats are just human beings, to try to meet people in the middle and to understand them. And I think that's noble, and I think we should entertain that so far as it goes. But we should not delude ourselves that there are people whose racism and whose violence will be successfully confronted by our acceptance and our empathy. I mean, I think we should try to make our case to everyone, listen to everyone that we can. But when the fight is on, and there are people who raid the Capitol of the United States of America, as they did on the 6th of January, 2021, carrying in some cases Confederate battle flags into this bastion, this solemn, sacred place of our democracy and our republic, and use them to beat almost to the point of death Capitol police officers who were sworn to protect and defend that citadel and all of us. And many of them, as you know, lost their lives in the wake and the aftermath of that insurrection attempt. And we meet it as we did, folks, from 2021 to January of 2025 with nothing. Nothing. So bad that those who actually were imprisoned have been freed by the president, who himself should have been put away for the rest of his natural life for leading that insurrection. So, we have to use that power when we have it. We have to use it justly. We have to use it for the right, because those young men and young women and our fellow Americans are watching. And if we fail at these moments of truth, we will reap the consequences as we are right now. Again, folks, 2026 is happening right now in 2025. We can bemoan what didn't happen in those 4 years, or we can get to work making sure that it does not repeat again. Thank you for that question. I appreciate that.
All right, back here, three more questions.
I think one of the major issues that we've seen outside of the social issues discussed here is often the economic side of the political debate, and whether that's in 2024, the presidential election, or Mike Flood saying, the greatest threat to American national security is our national debt. I was curious how you communicate that, in fact, dating back to when FDR took office, the economic performance under Democrat presidents versus Republican presidents has been significantly stronger than that of Republicans, and that Harvard Business School has indicated is not a coincidence, that it is statistically significant.
Yeah, great point. I mean, when's the last time we had a surplus that we were returning to the federal treasury to pay down that debt? I mean, Bill Clinton was the president of the United States. Look at the hand that Barack Obama was dealt when he was elected president in 2008, and how he played it masterfully to rescue this country. And it's almost like you don't get points if the country does not fall into a Great Depression in the first place. Look what George W. Bush did in his time in office. Prior to Trump, those were the biggest tax cuts. Those were the largest transfers of wealth from poor working class Americans to the very wealthiest. And then in addition, and there's never been consequence for this, and this goes back to there's never been consequence for what Trump has done. He sent your kids off to wars of choice in foreign lands under false pretenses and lies, taking the lives of thousands of Americans, who then in turn took the lives of tens of thousands or caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in those places, whose names we'll never know, whose lands we will never touch. That itself added trillions of dollars to the national debt. So you're right, we've got to connect these dots for our fellow Americans. But in addition, and want you to add anything that you want to. But in addition to these kind of meta numbers, I don't know how to get my head around $1 trillion or the $4 trillion that Mike Flood just voted to add to the national. It just sounds like a ton of money. But I do know when I meet somebody who's working as a contract baggage handler at the Houston airport making $7.25 an hour, and then leaves that job to go drive Uber, and then maybe teaching school during the school year on top of that just to make ends meet for their kid. And that person needs a living wage of $20 an hour, at least in the state of Texas. That's something that she understands and I understand, and I try to communicate it in that way. In my home state, it is the least insured in America. We lead the nation in childhood diabetes deaths. We're at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis. It's 3 times as deadly for black women. So when I say that we need Medicare for all or some other form of universal health care, people understand I mean you are guaranteed to be able to see that doctor or that provider or that mental health care specialist whenever you need them to save your life. So you're right. On the big numbers, for those who vote on these issues, we need to make sure they understand that. But on the day-to-day, how this makes me feel, what it means to my life, it's one of those things where we've got to show and not tell. And to the point made earlier by the gentleman, when we have power, absolutely ruthlessly use that to make people's lives better. They have to feel that in real time. Thank you for asking.
What's up, Beto?
Hi there.
All right, so who are we supporting in the Nebraska 2026 Senate race, and what are your thoughts on Dan Osborne?
Yeah, for me, ignorance is bliss on this. It was like, it was like being in Indiana recently and being asked which basketball team I was for. I don't know that I can answer that except to say that in these states, mine and yours included, these Senate races are the sleeper ones that no one is focused on. No one will see us coming. You know, when I ran against Cruz in Texas, which we talked about earlier, you know, we went to each one of those 254 counties around the state of Texas, holding town hall after town hall after town hall, meeting hundreds of thousands of Texans in the process. Ted Cruz did not know we were coming for him until it was almost too late. And listen, some days I wake up and I think we actually did win that race at the end of the day. Who knows? Who knows? So what I'm saying is that in Nebraska, this is the last place that the Republican Senate Campaign Committee is going to spend a dime. It may be the last place that the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee spends a dime, but no me importa. What we're going to do is to make sure that everyday Nebraskans get involved in these campaigns, donate what they can, knock on doors, meet people where they are. I think that is the most profoundly powerful way to win these elections. So I just hope that the Democratic nominee wins here in Nebraska. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
Okay, this is our last question.
Or the independent if they caucus with the Democrats.
Not a question, just a statement. I wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying about when you were talking about Medicare and Medicaid. I'm 52 years old. I've already had a knee replacement. I've had 3 brain surgeries, and I have a list of other medical conditions. I depend on Medicaid and Medicare. So I'm standing up so people can see who is going to affect and why it's going to affect me. One of my medications is $4,000 a month. And if I don't have this medicine, I'm going to die. I agree, it should be illegal, but welcome to America. So when people sit back and they say, oh, well, just go and get a job. My job almost killed me because of the condition that I have. So no, I can't do that. So I'm just putting a face to the name to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I love what you just said and the courage you showed in saying it, you know, revealing all of that, including your age. I'm a fellow 52-year-old, right? But you know what? Right? Cynthia with you is right behind you, is in our same, I won't tell you her name, but she's in the same general field. So we were talking about this earlier with the economy. When we get into numbers and trillions, and even in Medicaid and the tens of millions who are going to lose it, I mean, that hits us on one level. When I meet you and I see you, and I can only imagine what that would be like for me or a loved one in my family, or watching my mom 2 years ago die of cancer, and the medications and the doctor's visits and the chemotherapy and how expensive it was and how awful that we lost her, but how lucky we were that she had that health care. What would it have been like if she did not? I think each one of us has a story like that. You being here makes me connected to you. I see myself in you, and I want to fight for you, and I don't want you to lose that Medicaid or that Medicare or that access to that $4,000 a month treatment. So I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that you're okay and that you're healthy enough and well enough to keep going and do great things for this country. So thank you for showing up here tonight. Omaha, thank you all so much for being here. Yeah, so great. So just to repeat for everyone who didn't hear, how do we reach that part of the country that did vote for Donald Trump? And I think, we mentioned earlier, I think it begins by not judging or canceling or writing anybody off or presuming anything. There were legitimate reasons that people had for voting in what they thought was their best self-interest. The country, as it was not working for them. The system, in their view, was broken. And if someone comes along and says, I'm going to blow this up, and I'm going to reorder things, and I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to acknowledge all the ways in which this is not working, even though their solutions might, in our opinion, prove to be the wrong ones. We got to be there for them, because as they see that with their own eyes, as their loved ones are cut off Medicaid, as they go to the VA, and now that 83,000 positions at the VA, most of them held by veterans, are about to be cut, and their wait times go from weeks and months to years to never being able to see someone. If we've already pushed them into a corner, where are they going to go to next? The question is, how do we reach them right now? So what I do, I mentioned these 254 counties of Texas. The town hall that I'm holding this coming Sunday, and you all are welcome to it. It's about a 14-hour drive from here, an 18-hour drive, is going to be in Abilene, Texas. I think Donald Trump won Abilene, Texas with, Cynthia, 80%, 85% of the vote. So there are going to be people, because I've done them in Abilene before, who will come in wearing the MAGA hats, who will come in wearing their AR-15s or their sidearms into the meeting. We say, hey, it is cool. Everyone is welcome. Even the folks who protest my visit, come on in. Bring your protest signs as well. We'll hand you the microphone. We'll have a conversation right now. And I guarantee you when we have that conversation, I see MAGA hats nodding their heads. When I say, listen, this voucher scam that's going to take $1 billion from your local schools and transfer it to rich folks who are already sending their kids to private schools, in a state of 254 counties, 150 of them don't have a private school to send your kid to. In Abilene, every head is nodding. It's Friday Night Lights. It's the largest employer in their community. It's a source of civic pride. Yes, they want someone to fight for them. And this place is red. It is so red, you can see it glowing red from outer space as you orbit the planet. But we break down barriers by showing this profound level of common courtesy and respect, of meeting people where they are and listening to them and not writing them off. Because Democrats have feared to tread in places like Abilene, Republicans don't have to show up there either. They don't have a competitor on the November ballot. So they never hold town hall meetings like these. They never have to answer to their constituencies. They're never accountable for anything. Those folks are going effectively unrepresented, unheard, and unfought for. So that's what I'm doing in my capacity, is going to these red places, going to so-called red states, and going to red counties and seeking these folks out to listen to them and see if there's some common ground. And more often than not, there is. You, as you mentioned, with your family, with your friends, with your Facebook feed. We all have the opportunity to do the same thing. And I know these conversations are uncomfortable because I've been in countless of them. But if we don't have them, I don't know that we have a chance to reach these folks, to bring them across. We want to be that church that is not interested in excommunication, but more in conversion and bringing people in. And the only way to do it is to stop preaching to the choir and go out and reach the unconverted and give them a chance to see the light. So let's all do that together. Thank you for the question. Omaha, thank you for coming out. We are grateful to you. Les agradezco. Gracias.